At a time where a team is looking under threat from the chasing pack, their star driver is becoming frustrated and their secondary driver is driving like Ray Charles, let alone losing their talismanic car designer and coming off the back of a massive scandal earlier in the year, well, you'd really think that that team would come together as a united front and push to ensure that they're in the best possible position to secure the championships they seemed so guaranteed to get just months ago. Well, someone should probably tell Red Bull that, because they're too busy fighting with themselves to focus on providing their only hope of silverware, that being their star driver Max Verstappen, any kind of hope that the team behind him can actually sort themselves out. You have drivers calling each other out, higher-ups firing shots and sneak dissing in interviews, and above all else, a chasing pack looking to capitalize on the woes of the team that was on the top spot for the past 2 years. It really does seem that Red Bull is split down the middle. Want to know why the cracks at Red Bull have opened back up again? It seems like the turmoil behind the scenes is never ending, and the pressure caused by Sergio Perez's malperformance has really turned up the heat. And stick around, because another team principal has made his thoughts about the leadership at Red Bull clear, and he did not hold back. The words power struggle have been thrown around about Red Bull an awful lot this season, and for good reason. You only have to look at the situation surrounding the drivers to see that there are multiple sources of influence in the team looking to apply their pressure to get their chosen drivers in a race seat. For Horner, you've got Daniel and Checo, and for Marco, you've got Max and the junior drivers, and then there is Yuki, who is, well, he's just kind of there. Jokes aside, we'll get onto Yuki later, as he's been getting pretty fired up recently. I think it's fair to say that ever since the death of Dietrich Mateschitz, the balance of power that existed before has been thrown out of the window, and with everything that has been going on at Red Bull this year, the divide seems to have been made far wider. It was often said that Dietrich, Horner, and Helmut kept each other in check, and it does seem that this year Horner has made as much of a grab for power following his controversy as he could. So extreme was this that Max felt the need to issue a statement, claiming that if Marco was pushed out, then it would jeopardize his future at the team. In fact, Max holds just as key of a position off track as on track in regards to keeping the team together, with his mantra of keeping the right people in the right places proving pivotal to keeping Marco in his position. The problems behind the scenes at Red Bull this year have been intensified by the baffling Sergio Perez saga. I think the fact that Red Bull signed Checo on for a 2-year contract extension caught everyone by surprise, even if it was a 1+1, due to the fact that just mere months before, his future at the team was being called into question. Funnily enough, as I write this script, a replay of last year's Hungary Grand Prix is playing, where Brundle has just made a comment on Sergio's poor form in recent races. And hey, if Checo can repeat history and end up on the podium again this year after a run of poor form, then it might well just save his career. The reason for Perez's extension has been put down to one of two things, as it clearly wasn't due to a consistent showing of quality on track, even if he had a half-decent start to the year. It's either because he's an inoffensive driver who brings a lot of sponsors and their money and fans, or it was due to him not speaking out against Horner during his fiasco at the start of the year, something which seems to have put Horner firmly on his side. Regardless of which it may have been, the second quarter of this season has entirely undone the security that his contract may have brought to his seat, and it has truly got the other drivers in the Red Bull family smelling blood. We've already discussed Marco and the junior drivers' side in the last video, so if you want to know more about that, then feel free to check it out. The current news is surrounding the current RB drivers, with both being incredibly outspoken in the run-up to the Hungarian Grand Prix. Daniel Ricciardo, a driver who has faced his own fair share of criticism and pressure ever since his departure from Red Bull back in 2018, has spoken out about how he is familiar with Sergio Perez's situation, but also made it clear that he knows that both his and Checo's future is in their own hands, something which he is looking to capitalize on by maintaining an improved form from the past few races. Speaking about the pressure that Checo is under and how it may have been intensified by the media's scrutiny, Daniel had this to say: "I guess it depends how we're being spotlighted in the media, but the truth is every driver is under pressure. Even the ones that are killing it, there has obviously been pressure for them to keep performing. So my point is that we all feel it. Obviously, I've been in the spotlight a bit this year. Checo's in the spotlight now. Even after my good race in Montreal, I said, look, I need to do another good one because you're only as good as your last race, and one good weekend doesn't quite let you off the hook. It temporarily does, but then it can quickly change." The whole "you're only as good as your last race" mentality does hold true, however the damage of Checo's recent form will be pretty hard to ignore, especially if he falls short of that all-important exit clause. Daniel would then go on to say that where he and Checo spends next season is entirely in their own hands, with a clear indication that he feels he holds the power over his future. I think being in the Red Bull family in this program, I'm not a junior anymore, but I know how it works. It's always result driven. I think if we are doing good enough, then we put ourselves in the best seat. If there is some movement, then we hold the power in our results. There's much happening in Formula 1, but at the end of the day, it's in our control what we do behind the wheel and what the stopwatch says. So we try to control the controllables, and I think in that situation, quite a lot is in our hands. And a driver who feels that he has demonstrated enough to be an option despite nobody reporting on the issue nor the parent company that runs the team seeming to believe it is Yuki Tsunoda, who seemed to take massive umbrage with the sentiment that a junior driver and a driver beneath him in the championship could be chosen over him to be promoted. The Japanese driver has beaten Daniel since his re-entry to the team and had comparable performances with the substitute Liam Lawson for the 5 races he was in the car. When asked if he felt ready to step up to Red Bull, Tsunoda responded, "If I'm not ready, I wouldn't have been able to fully announce the next season, at least for VCARB. I've been feeling ready for the past 3 years to fight against the top teams, higher positions, even with Max or whatever, but in the end, they're the ones who are going to decide, and it's not the things I can control, so I'm just focusing on what I have to do in the next 2 races. So I have to focus on a lot of things with our teams, and yes, let's just see how it goes. Just the same as previous races, focusing on what I have to do for performance." And when asked if he felt that he deserved the seat, he replied with a blunt yes. However, he would also reveal that official talks regarding him moving up to the top team haven't even taken place, with only informal and casual discussions about it being the limit of the talks. It's been fairly clear that Tsunoda hasn't been seen as the answer for the Red Bull second seat by the higher-ups. However, he also proposes that putting Liam Lawson in the seat over him would be hard for him to understand, given the aforementioned trust that the team has put in him with the aforementioned contract extension. If they chose Liam, that would be weird, but for me at least, I don't think so. Liam did a really good job when he drove the previous year. I think I did more than that. We'll see how it goes. They know how to manage their drivers. Well, at least Yuki Tsunoda can start a career in comedy if F1 fails. We couldn't help but laugh at that last bit, no matter how earnestly it was said. The clear thing that both Tsunoda and Ricciardo can do is exactly what they claim is their aim for the next 2 races. Continue as normal and hope that you do enough to stand out. If neither of them do, or if both go on to have a torrid couple of races, then they could end up either paving the way for Liam Lawson to baffle Yuki, or they could be gifting Checo with the opportunity to keep his seat despite doing the bare minimum to earn it. The internal conflicts between not only the drivers but the higher-ups too makes for an ever-changing and hard-to-predict landscape of both teams. Add to that the potential of an F2 champion and a driver who demonstrated a clear capability into the mix, then Red Bull have enough drama going on for a silly season of their own. And it's not only internal pressures that Red Bull are having to cope with, because Zak Brown has been making his disdain for team boss Christian Horner known, as if we didn't know already, as well as made a pretty big claim about the dynamics within the Milton Keynes team, in regards to them treading on eggshells as to how they approach Max to not scare him out of the seat. Here's what the McLaren team boss had to say. "It seems to be that Red Bull is scared of Max. We're very honest with our drivers. If nobody tells him what he did wasn't within the regulations, why should he think otherwise?" And it's a pretty interesting point, as Red Bull really don't want to risk further rocking the boat with Verstappen, seeing as his dad was leading the calls for Christian Horner's head, and Zak saw the team's response to the collision with Norris as pandering to the Dutch driver. He would then go on to call into question the integrity of both the team and the team principal, claiming that he doesn't have it out for anyone in particular, it just so happens that they are the team that step out of line the most. "I only respond to things when I think they're not right. I speak up on issues. It just seems I have more issues with him more than others because he says and does stuff I think is wrong. It's less about getting under each other's skin and fighting because we were not competing with them during the cost cap episode. I just felt the integrity of the cost cap was critical for the success of Formula 1, and if it wasn't taken seriously, the sport would be damaged forever. I was trying to protect the integrity of the sport and they didn't take it seriously. That's why I spoke up." So Red Bull has enemies both on the outside and within itself, and Horner, despite surviving the early season episode, continues to be on the verge, as if he, like Checo, slips up just one more time, then there will be plenty of people calling for his head, none more so than the people closest to him.